So we are officially live. Hello, hello, hello,
Hello.
everyone. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I am just super excited to facilitate this conversation with these amazing candidates who are running for city of elected offices, specifically in the second ward here in the city of Cambridge. And at this time, I'm just going to give folks a few moments to tune in, as well as to share out the broadcast, invite some people to join us tonight as we get and share in discussion on various city issues and why these prestige individuals are running for this particular elected office. I am just so elated that you all have accepted the invitation to come on tonight. I did extend the invitation to all candidates running in this ward. Paul, he recently lost his mother, so he was not able to join us tonight. And Miss Meekins, she had a previous engagement, so she wasn't able to join us. However, I am appreciative that Mr. Syndor and Ms. Cephas, you have taken time out of your afternoon to join us tonight to actually share your vision as it relates to the city and why you ran for or why you are running for this elected office. So I just want to say that to start off. So at this time, I'm going to actually let you both introduce yourselves. We'll start with Mr. Syndor.
Yes, Donald Syndor. I have been on the city council for 14 years, going on the 15th year, hopefully. And I'm a resident of Cambridge, Maryland. I am a teacher. I've taught school here in Cambridge for 39.9 years with the Board of Education. I've also taught at Sojourner Douglas College and Chesapeake College. I have done work at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which was Maryland State, where I received my BS degree at that time. I've also attended college at George Washington, the University of Maryland, and at Georgetown University. I'm currently in the graduate program for the University of Maryland in the MML program, which is a program that gives leadership in local governments and municipalities. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your program, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
All right, Mr. Syndor, we appreciate your introduction. And again, thank you for joining us at this time, Ms. Cephas.
Hi, first I want to say thank you, Shay, for the opportunity of this platform. And I want to also give thanks to Commissioner Donald Syndor for his many years of commitment as far as serving the community here in Cambridge. So thank you, Commissioner Syndor. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm a mom of three. No problem, sir. I'm a mom of three. My oldest son, he's in his third year at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. He's a music major. I have two other children. My middle son, he's in his senior year of CSD, and my youngest, he's in his junior year. For 12 years, I managed a few businesses here in the area, and also in San Diego, California. I work for a company two companies called Rent-A-Center and Aaron's. And with those companies, they were basically $1 million revenue stores, and I was responsible for the budget and the total management of the store, from the front door to the back door, from the hiring, anything you could think of. I was totally responsible for making sure that the business happened. But after 12 years, I decided, you know what, I'm ready for something different. So what I did was I took a chance. I had a little bit of money saved up and decided I wanted to do something in law enforcement. So I applied at the Dorchester County Department of Corrections here in Cambridge. Was hired, went ahead, and I graduated from the Eastern Shore Criminal Justice Academy in Corrections. So I did that for a few years. And also during my time as a correctional officer, I was also a drill instructor for Warwick Community College as well. So pretty much every correctional officer recruit from Dorchester County, Talbot County, Wacomico County, even the ECI prison, they met me, they knew me, and I was responsible for mentoring them and basically getting them ready for working inside their facility. Where I am right now is I realize that I'm worth more on the outside of the community instead of behind the walls of a jail. So that's the reason why that I've decided now that it's time for me to take my spot here in the community and make some real change and actually make the city better, because Cambridge has the potential to be better.
Shay, I would also like to begin state that I am married to Carol Syndor. I would be remiss if I did not mention that. And I also have two sons, Donald Syndor II and Darren Lamont Syndor.
Yes, can't forget about the wifey.
No,
So,
we cannot.
so Jan, thank you as well for your introduction. It definitely speaks volumes as to why you both continue to desire to serve our community. So I guess we will get right into tonight's discussion. I first want to say, I know Mr. Syndor, you have been in the city council for some time now. So this upcoming election, if elected, if re-elected, you will be serving your 15th year, and that is correct.
Yes, that is
So,
correct.
so just kind of getting right into the conversation. I guess we'll start with LeJan. What was the reason what ignited you to say, I want to run for city council?
There were numerous things, but the one thing that stuck out with me the most is the conditions of the housing in our community. The numbers are just outrageous. Like it's been documented since 1969 that pretty much the conditions of these homes, they're not suitable. And actually, some of the same homes that were notated in this report that was put together by the Women League of Voters, it's the same homes, it's the same streets, and it's just really ridiculous that some of these homeowners, who I guess I could refer to them as slumlords, they're holding their tenants as slaves to these properties when these properties have a value way less than $30,000, and they're making millions of dollars off of these properties, and they're not paying their fair share of taxes. They're purposely allowing the value of these properties to depreciate, and it's weighing down the whole community. We can't bring businesses here because it's not a good representation. There isn't enough tax dollars going into the revenues, so we can build and do the things that we need to do. Even as far as with public works, they don't have the tools that they need to make the city clean and to make the city presentable. We don't even have enough money to actually support our police departments. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it was the situation, the housing, because it's deeper than houses. It's pulling down the whole community. So that's what motivated me to say a change needs to happen. Because once we fix that, I know we can get the city back on track. Actually, not even back on track. We can get the city where it needs to be, because we've never been there.
Wow, powerful. So the housing conditions, what really is what said, I'm not just going to talk the change, I'm going to walk the change. And in that walk, you decided to, of course, build the courage to run for an elected office. I want to say, LeJan, that's amazing. That's awesome. So I really do appreciate your perspective. Mr. Syndor, what made you register or file your candidacy for the opportunity to be re-elected?
Well, as was stated by LeJan, the fact that housing is a problem in Cambridge, in Dorchester County, and even in Maryland. In Cambridge, we have rental housing that is consistent of 62% of our housing force, and that leaves about 38% of homeowners. And so we have a lot of these landlords who are absent landlords that do not live here. They simply collect the money and are neglecting the duties that they should be doing with their houses. So that is one of the problems. But along with that, we're going to have to empower our people to find way to alleviate this problem of having to live in slum houses. Some of the things that we have to do in order to do that is, first of all, to educate the people that there are jobs that they can apply for, to elevate them from the positions that they are in. Some of those is even the city, our employees. Of course, we don't have the trash collectors now on the city payroll, but they were the lowest paid in the city. And some of them were very close to having to get assistance in order to survive. So we have to look at the broad picture. They are attempting to do something with the houses that are on the Pine Street area. Pine Street is not seen very much. Most of it's done on High Street. But that is only the start of the problem, because we have houses that are in the different areas. We still have people living in chicken houses in Cambridge that has been renovated into apartments. And at this time, no one seemed to be concerned about that particular area. Fortunately, they are not in the second ward, but unfortunately, wherever they are, it is not something that we would like for our constituents to have to live in.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So I guess, Mr. Syndor, you have this question would go to you. You've been sitting on the city council. This, if reelected, will be your 15th year. You made a point here. 62% of the city of Cambridge is made up of rentals, and being in your position as a city official and knowing the various ordinances that are created by our city government, how does that hold landlords accountable for some of the living condition of the housing?
Sometimes, if it's not in my ward, I don't see it. And in order to correct the problem, it's going to take a corporate effort of everyone and the mayor on the council to do that. And at the present time, we don't have that type of camaraderie where we can work together on these particular issues. We take them in spots. When things happen, we want to then try to address the issues. We're currently having through the Delmore Community Service. They are building homes that we're going to have for the first time for seniors who are 62 plus. And there are 61 homes that's going to be developed. They came down for a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, which has passed. And so that's going to be a great development that we're going to have off of Bailey Road, not only for someone to live, but the number of jobs that's going to be generated from that. And these jobs is what will help elevate people to be able to afford a different type of housing situation.
So I definitely um, I like the sound of that, senior citizen housing. But when we look at the various streets in Ward 2, so for those that are tuning in that don't have a clue what ward you live in, Ward 2 consists of Cowtail Crossing, Hudson Road, St. Clair, Gibson Road, Cosby Avenue, Greenwood Avenue, Edgewood, Huber Street, Rigby, Cornish Drive, Varbins High Street, Bradley High Street, Christ Rock Road, Goldsboro. I mean, it's a lot of various streets within the second ward. And one of the things that I definitely want to speak about tonight is specifically with Ward 2. We know that in Ward 2, we have a lot of complaints about youth. We have a lot of complaints about various things happen within the second ward. So my question to you both is, first, let's talk about what your thoughts are as it relates to some of these complaints. I mean, you have, different things happening on Greenwood Avenue that you see on social media, that you hear about over the scanner, that you hear people talking about. I mean, wherever you go in the city of Cambridge, it's some type of conversation. And not to target just Greenwood Avenue, because it happens throughout the entire city of Cambridge. However, tonight I want to actually get into the ward specific things, because of course the vote that you will receive will be from the second ward. So what are your thoughts about some of the complaints that you hear specifically about Ward 2, and what are your methods or your ideas in terms of addressing some of those complaints? LaJan?
As far as Ward 2, I know there was a phenomenon when they called it Club Cosby, where just about, if not every night, definitely on the weekends, be hundreds of people located behind. I'm trying to explain it. It's kind of like the little cubbyhole area. It's in between Greenwood Avenue and Cosby, where the park is. So they're literally just hundreds of people. And then when they leave, they crash. So then, so what it does is it causes the residents out there to be in disarray. Instead of me saying what I will do, I will tell you what I have done just as a citizen. Gone out there, I've spoke with individuals. We actually have a cleanup scheduled for next week on Saturday the 19th at 1 o'clock. And we invited various people from the community to actually go out in the area and pick out the trash. I also noticed there weren't any trash cans in that whole Greenwood area avenue, not one trash can. And then pretty much in the two or three blocks, there's every bit of 500 more people that's living there. How can the city have not one trash can out there? So that actually contributed to the issue. So once again, made phone calls. 2 trash cans were actually delivered out there by Public Works. I believe the day was Wednesday or Thursday. So that's what I'm doing. So instead of me saying what I'm going to do, that's what I'm doing. We have something in the works as far as with the youth. We're trying to get them involved in the community. So when we get out there on the 19th, we've already begun getting phone numbers of youth. So on the 19th, we should have a good group of people out there. We're going to show them that we care about this community. Although I don't live there, I grew up there. I still care about that community. I lived on Greenwood Avenue, the 600 side. I lived on Cornish Drive, 730 Cornish Drive. I even lived on Greenwood Avenue, like on the I guess Weaver Avenue, closer to that side. So that's still home to me, although that's not my current residence. So what the goal is to let them know that they matter, to let them know that they're important, and to let them know that I'm looking after you and we're going to get through this together. If I got to extend my hand and pull them up, but we have to let them know that as a community, we have to pull together and we can win if we get it together.
Awesome. Thank you, LaJan. Mr. Syndor.
As we stated before, that we have to find something for our youth to do, especially now that we have this COVID and a lot of this virtual platform that we are currently going to. The schools are not open at the present time. We have to be able to deal with getting broadband to all of the students and not just some of the students. But on Greenwood Avenue, at one point, we used to have a gathering of between 300 and 400 kids after school. And Greenwood Avenue was simply the meeting place for this to take place. Most of them did not live there, but this was a gathering place. So we did institute that we would help the police department, and by putting up cameras on Greenwood Avenue. Now, the problem is that we have the cameras there, but the police will have to access the cameras, and they can do that from their cars. They have used those cameras in order to solve several crime situations. But that's not enough. The main thing we have to do is find something for our youth to do. An idle mind is left to a mischievous way. And so we're hoping that through this Masons Lane Community Center that we are trying to have built, and we're working very well with that with the state and the Department of Housing Community Development. As far as the funding for it, the city has also given funds toward this center, and the county has just released a lease on the particular property. So the main thing is we have to find something for the youth to do. And even if we have to find some jobs for them to do, to give them the opportunity to be responsible, to be able to handle their money as they make it. And this would not necessarily be menial jobs, but there would be some jobs that would give them an opportunity to empower themselves.
Thank you both. I mean, that says a lot. We do have to find something for our youth to do. And I do believe that the process of engaging community in the process of change, it makes a lot of difference in what our community looks like. And this is exactly why we host Candid Crucial Community Conversations. What's keeping us divided? What's keeping us from moving forward? Let's talk about it, but not just talk about it, but how can we commit to come together to build that bridge, to shorten the gap so that we do see the unity back in the community. I will say that this election is one that's really it's major, and I got to be honest, I want to say for as long as I can remember, this is probably one of the largest elections in the history of Cambridge. I mean, we have 4 candidates running for the second ward, and that hasn't been the case in a long time. I don't ever recall it being that many candidates at one time actually running for election. Mr. Syndor, could you speak to that? Do you recall that ever?
Yes, it was. In 2005, there were at least 8 candidates running for the second ward.
Wow.
Until, of course, until we got to the general election. Fortunately, I made it through the primary and also made it through the general election. But it's been, as you said, quite some time since, because the last election I was unopposed in that particular election. But I do want to say one other thing. We have to look at our priorities with the city and the way that we spend our money. We spend a lot of money on the marina. It has a budget of $844,000. We have to pay for the mortgage on that marina, and we have been doing that ever since I've been on council. They have a consulting company to handle the marina, and they pay them $304,000 a year. Now, that's fine, but what do we spend on our youth? Why can't we reallocate some of these funds such that we can begin programs for our youth? And until we capture our youth, instead of spending all of that money, we need to look at our priorities to see how we can really help our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Senor. So let me also ask this. With the 14 years you have served, have people or groups come before the council with proposals of programs to help our youth? Have that been something that you've seen where the city has said, "Oh no, we're not going to do it," or have you not seen groups come forward and say, "This is a program I propose to the city, and I need X amount of dollars in order to do this program for this part of the community"?
When the mayor was first elected in 2008, she had on her desk a design for a youth activity center that was to be built on the corner of Ray Street and Cedar Street. Um, we never got the funds for that,
Mhm.
but yet we still can find these funds for the people who own these yachts and the people in the other wards for their particular activities. Quite often in the city of Cambridge, I have to admit that some wards has been neglected as far as funds is concerned. Most of the funds will go to, and I have to say it, the first and the fifth ward. But we have to fight in order to get the funds for our constituents in our particular ward. And I would like to just read a couple of things that I was able to do as far as getting funds for the second ward. One of them, Mason's Lane Road. It was a project, a very extensive project, and it cost around about $1 million. Another one was to put on the sidewalks from the Cambridge Commons apartment, and these sidewalks would go down to Billy Road. That would give the kids a chance to walk to school without having to walk in the dirt, and then go over to either Mason Lane Middle School or Chop Tank. The first set of cameras that we put on Greenwood Avenue, we spent about $85,000 on that. And I really worked hard to get those particular cameras. And we have another set that we are going to put up on Cornish Drive and Weaver, and they are in the process of being completed at this particular time. We just have to put the poles and the cameras up. We have the Cambridge Housing Authority, the renovation of those apartments. At one point, we had commissioners who said, let's get rid of those apartments, let's demolish those apartments, not concerned about where are all of these people going to go. But we got the people together and we stood up so that they could be renovated. And that was a project of around about $24 million between the Housing Authority and the one that we have down to Pond Street, Stephen Camper Park. We also have the renovation on Cosby Avenue, those apartment, which was probably $5 million. And then we have the renovation that has taken place on Greenwood high-rise apartments. And so we have many things that are going. And the main one that we have for the second ward is Chesapeake Grove Development with Sandy Grande. And we can figure that at build out, they are going to spend somewhere around $42 million. These are the things that we had to work for in order to get them in the second ward. And these will be providing jobs, not only for the constituents in the second ward, but the residents of Cambridge and Dorchester
Awesome.
County.
So, I mean, there's a lot of initiatives that have gone forward and resources that have been placed in the second ward, as Mr. Syndor has shared. One of the questions I do have for you both running for the city council for the second ward is, as you are going before council representing the community, how will you engage community in the process of change or in the process of some of these initiatives? For instance, the cameras that are up in Greenwood, was the constituents notified that the cameras would be coming? Did they have say in that process? Or was that something that the council decided to do as an initiative for the complaints that they were receiving? And I know that I'm speaking specifically to the cameras, but I'm also speaking in general. If you are re-elected, Mr. Syndor or Ms. Cephas, if you are elected, how would you engage the second ward constituents in the process of what's happening in the city, in city council, so that they can continue to support you? I guess I'll go with LeJan.
Yeah. Phone number, cell phone number. That's one thing. Everyone will have my cell phone number. Pretty much everyone. I've been just about to every door in Ward 2. I've missed a few streets, but I've given out my cell phone number. I actually have a subscribed text alerting system, which is basically if they subscribe to text messages, any type of update I need to send, I just create it, hit the send button, it gets sent to everybody immediately. Email address, that's one, and also of course in person. So I don't have an issue talking to people, knocking on doors, even in the middle of COVID. I'm still doing this, but obviously safe, because I don't want to invade someone else's privacy. I give them enough distance, but I just want to let them know that I'm here, I'm paying attention. What do you need me for? Use me. I'm supposed to be your servant. I'm not here to serve myself. I'm here to serve you. But But those are the tools that I intend to use, and also the tools that I've been using so far in this campaign to keep in contact with the residents in Ward 2, because their voice matters. You know, I'm supposed to be the voice for them, so their input is extremely important. And I also want to bring up the point that $85,000 was spent on camera system on Greenwood Avenue, but you still got 200 to 300 people hanging out. People are getting shot. They're still shooting at the police. I don't know if that was a good investment. So I'm still trying to figure if that was a good investment. And then the other thing is with the Macy's Lane project, this has been going on since 2017. Why is there still a fence around it? Why is it we don't have youth in there yet? So I'm just using this opportunity to say that it's extremely important that we get that we stay in contact with the community. It's extremely important that we have effective communication, because in order to have communication, it has to be a two-way street. You got to have a sender, you got to have a receiver. You just can't go in the community and do whatever it is you feel you need to do, because it's not going to be successful. And then the other thing is execution. A lot of these programs, a lot of these studies that have been done is poor execution. You do a study, nothing's completed. Then 2 years later, you do another study, nothing's completed. When it's going to get to the point when execution happens and we see results? And it's fully possible to make change in a matter of a week. You can make change in a matter of months. It shouldn't take more than 5 years to make change. If it's taking more than 5 years, then we need to do something different.
All right, thank you, LaJan. Mr. Syndor.
First of all, addressing the $85,000, that approximately $85,000 that was used for the cameras. The residents, we spoke with the residents. This is something that they wanted on Greenwood Avenue because of the congestion of the kids meeting after school. It was also to be an aid to the police department. Our police department is not up to staff at this particular time. And so this would be an aid to them, that once they saw a problem, they could be sort of proactive, seeing the problem and then moving to the particular location. Now, it's not just cameras on Pine Street. We have on Greenwood Avenue, we have cameras in many places in Cambridge. We have them at the Long Wharf. We have them on Pine Street. So there's many areas that we have cameras, but just having the cameras, and if no one is going to look at them, then they become an insignificant piece of tool that we actually have. But if they utilize them, then they can become more proactive. Concerning the community center, Dorchester County owns the school. And so we had to go through the process of dealing with Dorchester County. One of the reasons that they had put that fence around there was something that I requested, because the school was still accessible to many of our youth. And it was a very dangerous building if you have been in there. There's jagged pieces of metal and things like that. And so through that suggestion, they had to put up that fence around the building. Now, through the organization, they are the ones that are handling this as far as the completion and what is to go into that building, and that's the Mason Lane Community Center alumni organization. And basically, I've tried to support them by finding funds that they would be able to utilize. And I did find funds in our city budget beginning in 2017. And we started off with 65,000. Of course, that's not enough. We need much more than that. And so it's going to take a process. It cannot be done overnight, especially if you are working with the state, because they have certain guidelines through the Department of Housing and Community Development that they must utilize if they're going to give you grant funding for these buildings.
Yeah, so I think that, process is definitely something that, we have to become accustomed to, we have to understand. And I think that's another thing. This platform was actually designed to provide the space so that community could hear from the individuals that are working or that are running for office, that are in positions in order to help to get them informed about what's going on. There's a lot of things that take place in city, county, and at the Board of Education that the community is not aware of. I actually attended city council meeting, and I mean, in that meeting, there was discussion about the increase of property tax for homeowners. I am a homeowner, so being in that meeting, I learned a lot in the couple of meetings that I went to, based around the conversation of increasing property tax. And the thing that I brought back to community is to really understand that when they receive a new bill from their mortgage or their lender, and the mortgage statement has increased, a lot of times people automatically, they call their lender and they start fussing. Well, wait a second, last month my mortgage wasn't this amount, or all of a sudden my mortgage has gone up. So my efforts was to engage community to understand that there is a process that happens. And when you are not informed of the process, sometimes you call and you make, talk with people that don't have anything to do with the results of the increase of mortgage. And I'm just using that as an example because a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that, their mortgage is not just their house payment. It's, what's happening with the escrow account and what's going on within the city and the county and all of these various components that factor in their mortgage statements. And they don't know that. So, we have a community who's very uninformed. So for me, when I started to really get embrace the process of politics, for me, it's not politics that would serve one individual person, but it's what's the purpose behind the politics, and how is it going to bring us together as a community and move us forward? So I definitely do appreciate that, Mr. Syndor, because that is definitely something that we have to be communicating to community. As LaJane, you said, effective communication. We have to keep the lines of communication open so that the community knows what's happening, and they're not getting the short end of the stick once everything is already in the works. So I definitely appreciate you both for sharing your perspectives on those things. So I guess, Mr. Syndor, I want to actually direct this question to you. You've had a lot of experience, years of experience serving within the city council. Can you explain to the viewers as well as us what that looks like in terms of you may have something that's really near and dear, and it may affect the second ward more than it affects Ward 1. And I just use Ward 1 for this example. But because this particular issue is something that Ward 2 constituents constantly say to you, Mr. Syndor, we need to do something about this. We need to do something about this. And you stand up for our ward as a representative and you say, this is what my thoughts are as it relates to this, and I vote in favor of this. Can you explain just to the viewers how that works? If you vote in favor of something, with the city council being made up of 5 council members, how your vote towards an issue either helps or it hurts?
In many cases, a vote for something to pass, it has to be passed by a majority, which you need 3 votes for it. The exception is that if you're going to take funds from reserves or add funds to the general budget, then you need a super majority of votes, which would take 4 votes from the commissioners in order to pass that. In some cases, if a problem does persist, we do not serve just our particular ward. We do serve the entire city of Cambridge. I've done a lot of work with the wharf that was built down at Sailwinds, and spent many meetings in Annapolis in order to get that done. Now, that wasn't in my particular ward, but it will benefit my constituents by having that facility there that they can go to, rest, walk on, and hopefully we will have that area developed for other things to take place there. But whatever something should come up, I'm going to speak up for my constituents, whether someone else on the council like it or whether they don't like it. But I'm going to speak up to represent them fully. And that's all that I can do, is to try to give them my opinion and let them formulate their own opinion, whether to vote with me or to vote against me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's another piece of the puzzle that community has to really understand too, right? We
Yes.
can go through this election and the individuals, of course, the wards come into play when we speak of elections because all the votes that will get you in that office comes from your specific ward. However, when you are elected, you serve the entire city. It's not just Ward 2, but at the same time, the constituents in Ward 2 and throughout the city has to understand that it's just not you as a one person army. You need support from your other councilmen and women in order to get something passed or in order to see that fundings or funds are allocated to pressing issues that you feel that the community needs. So I appreciate that. Lejan, if you would share your experience. And of course, as I said, this platform, we're not mentioning names, but you have been attending council meetings by phone more recently. Has those meetings affected your decision to continue to run? Has it ignited your fire? Has it made you feel like, wait a second, what am I getting myself into? Could you share your experience?
I love a challenge. I would say the council meetings do not seem like a council meeting. It seems like it's almost about to be a WWE wrestling match. I'm just being honest with the yelling and the shouting. It's ridiculous. There's a better way of getting things done. At the end of the day, the marina belongs to every ward, not just Ward 1, not just Ward 5. You know, there aren't any signs that says if you're Ward 2, you can't come here. So my intentions, if I'm elected, when am I elected, to let Ward 2 know that marina is yours, belongs to everyone. So that's going to be an investment for everybody. And I believe once we work together and get that marina where it needs to be, to the point where it's generating revenue for us, because just as Commissioner Syndor says, it's not making us any money, but it has full potential to do it. It's water. They say water moves us. So we need to get the right people in place to get the water moving so we can move, so we can make this Cambridge a better city. So that's my answer for you. So as I said, it's a challenge. So what I intend to do when I'm elected, we're going to work as a team. You know, the Mason Lane project is not going to be a Ward 2 project. I'm going to go to Ward 1, Ward 3. I'm going to go to every ward and say, look, this project is for every child in Cambridge, not just those that live in Ward 2. We all need to come together. We need to get our heads together, come up with a plan so we can get these doors open, get the fences pulled away, get the weeds pulled up, and bring this building to standards. So when these kids get out of school, when it's the summertime, they have a safe place where they can go and they can have some fun. And the parents are happy because they know their kids are safe.
Wow, it is a challenge, and I'll be honest, I'm not as present as I have been prior to COVID with City Council. However, I have heard that it's very challenging. And Mr. Syndor, the number of years that you have been there, if you would just share, like, how do you feel at this present moment in terms of what's happening in our city government?
The government has changed in the last couple of years, and it more or let me say something of concern in the Masons Lane School. And I never said it was strictly for the second ward. I said it's for the city of Cambridge and the kids of Dorchester County. So it's going to benefit all of Dorchester County because it is state funds. And if you have state funds, you cannot discriminate against a particular area. But the council has become highly receptible to certain issues that we have at the council. There are issues such as when they did the budget this year, they did the budget by looking at their expenses first. And then once they determined the expense, they looked at revenue to make the revenue equal to the expense. And once they fell short on the revenue, then they took the revenue to make that equal from our reserve funds. $2.1 million. We need to, in the time that we are going through now, to look at how are we spending the taxpayers' money. And I think that we could better utilize those funds if we had started with the revenue and then make the expenses come down to the revenue that we were receiving rather than to take our reserve funds. Because 2.1 million would equate between 25 and 28 cents for the taxpayer. Each penny will generate around $75,000. Now, although if they had said, let's not use the reserves, we would go to the taxpayer and ask them for this money. Well, that's what the taxes would have to increase too. But instead, took it from the reserve. At some point down the road, the taxpayer is going to have to pay for that money that we are using. Their thought is, well, let's get a loan, a $2 million loan, and put that back in reserve. Well, you're still going to have to pay that loan. So there's many things that are taking place at council that the charter usually govern what we can do. But now we seem to want to find ways to change the charter to suit certain needs and not to suit the city of Cambridge. One of those.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Another issue that we just experienced is the mayor can only vote according to our city charter if there is a tie vote or on a veto. And only if there's a tie vote between the voting commissioners. They have recently wanted her to vote to do a budget amendment, which would be the first time in the history of Cambridge that a mayor has voted on an issue not related to personnel and not because of a tie vote. Fortunately, she had the wisdom to know that that was not the case, that she should do that. So those who persisted that she do something wrong, I'm glad that she stood up to do the right thing.
Thank you so much. Again, it is definitely a touchy time in the city of Cambridge, specifically in our government. And, as I said before, we all want to get into names and get into specifics because, of course, even though the city council meetings are public record, for those that do want to go and see those, they're welcome to do so because they are live streamed. But we don't want to kind of get into that. But thank you, Commissioner Syndor, for, definitely pointing out that, our mayor was put into a situation and she made the decision to do what was right. And of course, that's what we all should do when we're put in situations and it doesn't align. I believe that a lot of the reason why I have taken so much interest into politics is because when we think about our policy, I feel like there is a tremendous gap in the policy makers and the individuals that policy directly affects. And the policy is not often looked at as it should be. In my personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion, sometimes the policy isn't looked at as frequently as it should be. Another thing that I would ask, for you both to kind of consider is, with hearing the statistics that Commissioner Syndor has given, we have 62% of rentals in the city of Cambridge. 38 is homeowners. When we talk about increase of taxes for homeowners, Is there any conversation about anything that the runners or any other responsibility that the runners will have? Because like you said, some of these landlords, they no longer live in the city of Cambridge. They're not held accountable as they should be for the conditions of some of their properties. Now, who does that fall back on? We're not going to discuss that tonight because we're wrapping up in this conversation. But those are things that we have to look at when we start having conversation. We have to look at process. We have to look at policy. We have to look at what that process look like. Sometimes we will have an attitude with the city council, but is this property line within city limits, or is this something that city and council is a city and council, county council issue, or is this a state issue? So it's a lot of different working components as it relates to government, and it would be entirely too much to try to touch on within an hour on this broadcast, right? I mean, I'm sure Commissioner Syndor, you could probably agree, to try to get into the working components of, the different channels things have to go through before we can say we're going to put a vote on this, would be a lengthy discussion.
I would have to agree with you. Since I've been on council, we have during the summer and during the fall an MML convention, Maryland Municipal League convention in Ocean City, and we're actually fortunate to host one here in Cambridge at the Hyatt. Through that convention, they offer various classes. They offer the opportunity to network with people not necessarily in your area, but outside of your area. So you can get a broad spectrum of what is going on in the state of Maryland, not just Cambridge. And you'll find sometimes that you may not be much different from other areas, but you can sit down and discuss your issues. They can discuss their issues. And then sometimes you can formulate a better idea. So through that, and I've been going to that ever since I've been on council. I've been learning from that ever since I've been on council. And as I continue to go to that, I will continue to learn from that.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, you just cannot summarize that in a very short period of time.
It definitely takes some time, and that's something that I had to learn when I ran for county council. I had to know that, I had different issues that were very pressing to me that I really wanted to see change happen, but from actually going to meetings, from, networking with various politicians, not just in Cambridge, not just in Dorchester County, but even in other areas, I had to learn very quick that there is a chain of command. And sometimes that chain of command where we want to see change happen like last week, when we feel like it should have happened 5 years ago, when you pull all of the other working components into it, you don't know where the breakdown in communication comes from. So I think for our local city council and anyone that's in the community, we have to get behind our elected officials. It's not enough just to turn out at the voting polls on October the 17th. And I think that's another thing that has changed. The city council election used to be held with the presidential election. That changed, correct, Commissioner Syndor?
The reason that it has changed this year is that the previous attorney that we had, our election was separate, not necessarily with the presidential election. It was a separate election. And with that, we wanted to have that with the presidential election this year. But the papers were not filed in a timely manner to the state of Maryland, because you have to file the papers with the state in order to be put on the ballot. So for that particular reason, we had to find a different date for our election. And in doing that, because the county has an election that's coming up in November, they are concentrate a lot of time to this November election, which is going to be mailed in. So they were not able to handle our particular election. And so we had to come up with different dates for the election. And we decided for October as the main part of the election. If a candidate gets 51%, then they would automatically be seated for that particular candidate. If they don't get 51%, then there's a runoff election that's going to take place in December. So we had to get a private individual to handle the elections for us this year. And the supervisor of election is our city manager, Patrick Kaminsky.
Wow. Okay. So that's the thing. So we got about 5 more minutes. I do want to make some announcements before I get closing remarks from Lejan and Mr. Syndor. First, I want to say again, thank you both for taking the opportunity to come on to have this conversation. I believe that it's going to be through these conversations that community gains an understanding to be informed so that they will be engaged in the process of not just this election, but in the process of building community. We need one another. It does not matter what we all do in silo, but when it all comes down to the wire, we need one another. So I really want to say I appreciate you both for taking this time in this last hour with me. We will be interviewing, for those that are viewing and those that will catch the replay, we will be interviewing all of the individuals that are running for any of the elected seats for the city council. On Monday, September the 21st, we are going to have the candidates that are running for wards 3 and 4. October the 4th, which is a Sunday at 7:30, we will have the candidates that are running for wards 1 and ward 5. Even though Mr. Marcus is running unopposed, he's still going to come on to speak about his campaign and what his desires are for our city. And then the last but not least, right before the elections, which the election is on October the 17th, we are going to have our candidates that are running for the mayor for the city of Cambridge, and they will be on Sunday, October the 12th, 11th. I think it's the 11th, and that's all at 7:30. So at this time, I want to say again to Lejan and Mr. Syndor, thank you all for taking the opportunity to come on. Miss Johnson Tillery, she says, great information. Please share the city council meeting dates and times. She wants to actually call in as well. And Ms. Williams said elected officials need to remain visible after being elected. I agree. So at this time, I'm going to come back to, I guess we'll have Mr. Syndor give us his closing remarks, and then Lejan, you can close us out.
There's many things that needs to be done that we have mentioned on this broadcast in the city of Cambridge. I think of back in the 60s when we had strong leaders like Elaine Stafford and her husband, Lemuel Chester, Pee Wee Jackson. We had many leaders back there during that particular time, but it was initiated by the youth. And that's one thing that I'm proud to see this time as our youth wanting to get involved. I would not want to stymie them at all. I hope that they will continue to get involved because you are the future of Cambridge. I cannot take this much longer, but I'm just proud of our youth and for them to take that initiative and to want to see a different direction and be involved, not just seeing a direction, but in being involved in the future of Cambridge. And that I want to thank you and all of those who are working with you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Syndor. That means a lot. Yes, our youth is the future for our county, for the city of Cambridge, and we definitely do appreciate the youth that are moving, shaking, and making noise. So, Lejan, give your closing remarks at this time.
I just want to say that in order for any change to take into effect, it takes community. One person cannot do it. And in order for the community to be involved, there has to be effective communication, as I stated before. Effective communication means you have a sender, you have a receiver. You know, we've been missing out on a lot of receivers, and sometimes we've been missing out on some senders. But it's time that we get the community involved. The city needs to be more transparent. Even you know, even as far as the budget, I'm not really quite sure the reason why the budget isn't done in layman's terms, you know, so that any regular resident can understand where the money is being spent. So, but I believe we can do it. I know we can do it. We have great people here. We have so much talent here in Cambridge. It's just a matter of recognizing the talent and putting the people where they need to be so we can move this city like the fine machine that I know it can be.
Absolutely. Thank you, LaJan. So again, thank you, Commissioner Syndor
Thank
and Ms.
you.
Cephas for coming on tonight. We have Ms. Meg Maddox. She said, yes, thank you for your time this evening. She resides in the 2nd Ward, so she's been tuning in. Ms. Chrissy Stanley said, wow, experience is always appreciated. I'm also excited about LaJan's approach and her motivation. So we appreciate every one of you for tuning in. And you're right, we do need the community. This has to be a community effort. This cannot be people's personal agendas, but this has to be a community agenda. So we are just looking forward as United 4C Strong. We're looking forward. We know that we're stronger when we do it better when we do it together. And we are continuously committed to facilitating these candid, crucial conversations to have the discussion to build and engage our local community. So have an amazing night, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a wonderful